So, you know what we're doing today? We're going kayaking and we're going to be talking about the fights. And when we kick it off with this card, you look at a couple of different fights that are added in on short notice, and you have Terrance McKinney, who right now, he's a little bit like an old pull start chainsaw that you inherited in a move. First little bit was great, we're chopping the wood, but now he's sputtering, the carburetor's plugged, and we're kind of fucked. So when you look at his fight coming up this weekend, he's replacing groovy Lando Venata on about a week and a half's notice, taking on Money Mike Breeden out of Marathon MMA. Join me, why don't you? We got to put these kayaks up on the car. So listen, when you look at the fight that we have coming up, you look at a guy in Terrance McKinney, started off his pro career at 145 pounds. He was 7-1 coming into Dana White's Contender Series 2020, and he was taking on Sean Woodson in that one. You guys know Sean Woodson. He competed last weekend, and he was taking on Dennis Bazookia. Woodson looked pretty good, didn't he? Well, if you remember that fight that we had where Terrance McKinney, he's taking on Woodson. First round, fairly competitive. A lot of really good grappling by McKinney. Second round seems to be going McKinney's way. He gets clipped by a couple of shots. He panics for a takedown. He gets back up. He eats that knee. And what's the main takeaway from that? It's a loss against a really good level of competition in Woodson. But for McKinney, it's interesting. When things go bad, he tends to go back to his roots. And he's a guy that wrestled, much publicized, North Idaho College. He was an All-American when he was wrestling. He obviously had the near-death experience. That's been much documented as well. But if you look at it for Terrance McKinney, when it goes bad, like against Gabriel Bonfim, he's going out there, he's initiating some of the wrestling, he gets submitted. His last time out, he took that fight, and that was against Nazem Sadikov, where McKinney is a pretty big underdog in that one. Sadikov looked pretty darn good. McKinney had a little bit of early success, and then after a bit of time, it was Sadikov taking over. Sadikov gets the win and gets the submission. So we do know quite a bit about Terrance McKinney, and when I say he's like the old buzzsaw, I mean, that guy can get it done. We've seen him get it done. The crazy fight against Drew Dober, the slip of the kick against Faraziem, where, listen, I mean, it looked like it was going to be all McKinney right there. And then you have, I mean, you know, a giant win over Ziem against Drew Dober. It just doesn't go his way. But we've had some crazy performances so far out of him. And so if you look at McKinney, 117,000 Instagram followers. And just last week, he was in Salt Lake City. He was getting ready with Kevin Holland, which has got to be a little bit awkward because Holland beats Michael Chiesa. Terrance McKinney used to train at Sick Jitsu, or a little bit around Sick Jitsu with Michael Chiesa. So a little bit weird there. But when we kind of turn the tables and you look at Mike Breeden, who was originally scheduled for this fight, like Mike Breeden's getting ready for groovy Lando Venata. You're going to get some of that wrestling. You're also going to get some of the striking. And just like Lando Venata, Terrance McKinney's kind of had the same career. Things haven't necessarily gone his way. He's had some wild fights. And yeah, it just seems like things get away from him in some of these big opportunities. But for Breeden, he got a shot on Dana White's Contender Series as well. And he was taking on a really good level competition. It was the Canadian Anthony Romero. Look at this. So when you're taking on Anthony Romero, what do you necessarily have to do? You have to avoid the wrestling. And what was Mike Breeden not able to do? Avoid some of the wrestling. Breeden has some more fights on the regional scene. We're talking the Furies and the like. He had some LFA experience as well. But when Breeden comes into the UFC, similar kind of situation to what McKinney's doing this weekend. It was on about 10 days notice. He was taking on Alexander the Great Hernandez. Breeden gets finished early in the first round. So his next time out, he takes on a bit of a tough test, a little bit more of an unknown, the karate man who likes to wrestle. It's Natan Levy. And what everybody remembers is Breeden loses that fight. 29-28 across the board. But what you're going to forget is where Levy wrestled in the first, Levy wrestled in the second, and the third, James Krause gave Mr. Breeden quite a bit of a pump up, and I know that's a little bit of a bad word. Again, Breeden's one of those guys that used to train out of Glory. Now he's out of Marathon MMA with Trey Ogden. You saw a big win there a couple of weeks ago. Miranda Maverick getting the win over Priscilla Cachoeira, everybody's favorite. But Mike Breeden got amped up, went out there, had himself a good third round, but he loses that fight. And it's one of those ones where Breeden's been out for a really long time, looking for a first win since 2021. He's been doing a lot of training. He actually was in the corner of one of his teammates, Zach Scoggin, here at FAC 20, you had him, you had Trey Ogden, so you do like to see that out of Mike Breeden. Always staying active, he's still around the sport. Listen, there's motorcycles having fun in the background, we're just doing the damn thing. But when you look at a fight like this, I mean, Breeden's an interesting guy, kind of like Jorgen de Castro. 3-4 as an amateur, 10-5 as a pro, all kinds of finishes. But what he does really well, where he gets his bread buttered, he plods forward, he leaves his weight on his front foot. He fights kind of like, and I know you might not like it because he just fought last weekend, but kind of a Nate Diaz light. So look out for that from Mike Breeden when he takes on Terrance McKinney. Very, very crisp boxing. McKinney on a little bit of a slide, coming in here on short notice, really, really short notice. And when I look at a fight like this, for me, I'm going to go with Terrance McKinney to get the win in this one, but it should be a really interesting fight. I mean, when you do look at it, these guys have Apex experience, and that Sadikov fight for Terrance McKinney was at the Apex. So really interesting one for these two guys, and an interesting one too for Marathon MMA. That stable of stars, yes, they can hit. They're starting to gain a little bit of traction. Should be a really good fight. We got some great ones on this card. Main event, Luque taking on RDA. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.